Welcome to the North Ridgeville City Schools Board of Education meeting. Today is Tuesday, November 19th. It is 6:02 p.m. I'd like to call this meeting to order. If you could, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Our flag is in a new location this week. Don't be confused like I read last week. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can I get a roll call, please?
Ms. Yetsey?
Here.
Ms. McCarthy?
Here.
Ms. Saxon?
Here.
Mr. Mura?
Here.
Mr. Potter? Here.
Everyone's present. Finalization of agenda.
The agenda is final as presented.
Thank you. Approval of minutes. It is recommended the Board of Education approve the written summary of the special and regular minutes for the meetings on October 15th and October 21st, 2019.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Saxon, seconded by Ms. Tamira. Mrs. Joanna. It's going to be one of those nights, folks. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Saxon?
Yes.
Mr. Mura?
Yes.
Ms. Yetsey?
Yes.
Mr. Potter? Yes. Ms. McCarthy?
Yes. That takes us to superintendent's report. Mrs. Ramsey Casario.
We have a lengthy but exciting superintendent's report, and as always, we like to start with our students of the month. And we begin that recognition with Andrea Vance from our early childhood learning community. Mrs. Vance.
For my ball back here. Oh, here's my ball. Yeah, I've been the goal.
Okay, I have the pleasure tonight, good evening everyone, I'm Andrea Vance, the building principal at the Early Childhood Learning Community. I have the pleasure tonight to introduce two of our students of the month, and I'm going to start with Leah Meester first. And Leah, can you wave?
That's bad.
Can you wave to the crowd? Wave to the board members? Say hi. Back here, look, say hi everybody. Leah is in Miss Tabato's preschool classroom, and Miss Tabato says that Leah has been working so hard. She comes to school every day with a smile on her face. Sorry about that, Leah. And is ready to laugh. Leah is using her communication device, as you see, every day to communicate her wants and needs, and that she does. She is also working very hard at centers to complete her work. And she's been doing a wonderful job in class. Keep up the great work. Miss Melody and Miss Tabato are very proud of you, along with Miss Vance. Congratulations. And our next student of the month is Lena Parsons. And Lena, can you wave? All right. 2 for 2. She is in Miss Rogers' classroom, in her kindergarten classroom, and Miss Rogers says that Lena comes to school excited every day to learn. She is kind and sweet and caring, and she is always following the classroom rules and being Ranger strong. So congratulations to Lena. I'd like to introduce Mr. Hefner.
Hello everyone, my name is Mitch Heffer. I'm the principal of Livery School, and it is my pleasure to introduce both of our students of the month. I will start with our first grader, Caleb Fleming. Go ahead and wave, Caleb. Alright, I met with Caleb and he got to know him a little bit, and things that I learned from him was he loved to play catch with his dog named Ben. He enjoyed his birthday party with his mom and dad, and he loves to play with his friends. And he was nominated to be Student of the Month by Mrs. Major, and here's what she has to say about him. Caleb is a wonderful student to have in our classroom. He is a hard worker and very friendly. He is helpful to his teacher and other students. Caleb is a great example of what it takes to be Ranger strong. We love having Caleb in our classroom. Great job, Caleb. Our next student of the month is a second grader nominated by Mrs. Gee, and her name is Erica Ford. Go ahead and wave, Erica. When I met with Erica, she told me that she enjoys camping with her family, which we share that in common. I love camping as well. She also loved her time at Myrtle Beach, and her favorite subject is math. And here's what Mrs. Gee had to say about Erica. It is a real pleasure to have Erica in our classroom this year. She always displays Ranger-strong behavior like good listening, helping others, and trying her hardest to meet her goal. In addition, she always is putting her best foot forward to be the best that she can be. Wonderful job, Erica. It's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Plantner from 3-4.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Greg Plantner. I'm the principal of the 3rd and 4th grade here at the Academic Center, and I brought with me two of our wonderful students, our two students of the month, one from 3rd and one from 4th grade. We're going to start today with Layla Torres. Layla is here right next to me, and she is a 3rd grader in Mrs. Rattari's homeroom in the Purple Studio here at the Academic Center. This is what Mrs. Rattari has to say about Layla. Layla Torres is an incredibly respectful student. Layla's patient, kind, and understanding. She's helpful to her peers during daily 5 reading and during math rotations. She's respectful to adults by setting an appropriate example in all aspects of her day. She never hesitates to share positive learning strategies or to make someone's day better with a little note and words of encouragement. Layla makes the class a better place for everyone each day. Keep up the great work, Layla. We are fortunate to have you in our classroom. Congratulations. And our other student of the month is Audrey O'Hara here, 2 students to my right. Audrey is a 4th grader in our green studio. She was in Mrs. Harnish's homeroom, and this is what Mrs. Harnish has to say about Audrey. Audrey O'Hara is a very respectful student. Since the start of the year, she's demonstrated a gracious attitude toward her peers, teachers, and others that she comes into contact with each day. She's careful with her belongings, making sure that they are always neat and in order, and she takes on the responsibility of helping others to maintain a neat, organized working environment as well. She always speaks to her teachers and other adults in a very courteous manner, and we always can count on Audrey to make appropriate choices. We are very proud of Audrey. Thank you for being Ranger Strong. Next, I'd like to introduce Mrs. Lee Armbruster from grades 5 through 8.
Good evening, I'm Lee Armbruster, and I'm honored to be here to show off a couple of our students from NRAC. We have 2 7th graders here tonight. And at the Academic Center 5 through 8, we do nominate 6 students from each studio every month, focusing on the 6 attributes of Ranger Strong. So these 2 7th graders were 2 of the top in 7th grade after we went through the 18th through all of the entire 7th grade. So first I want to start with Casey Melvin. Casey, you want to give away? Casey shows respect. She was nominated for the R in Ranger Strong for respect. Casey Melvin shows respect to her teachers and peers on a daily basis. She is always helpful to her teachers and classmates. She shows respect by saying please and thank you to everyone, cleaning up after herself and others, and following all the classroom expectations. She respects herself most importantly by staying on track with her grades and her personal responsibilities. She is always polite and displays Ranger Strong qualities in all that she does. Congratulations, Casey. And our second student is Josh Perry, and good job, Josh. Josh and Casey are both in 7th grade Yellow Studio. Josh has taken ownership, so he was nominated for the O in Ranger Strong for ownership. He has taken ownership in his learning by asking great questions and completing work efficiently. Josh takes ownership of his actions in the classroom and in the hallways during transitions. He always makes sure that he is working to complete his classroom activities and to be on time to class every day. Josh continues to show many Ranger Strong characteristics every day at school. Congratulations, Josh. Next, I'm going to introduce Melissa Berkeley from the Ranger High Tech Academy.
Good evening, I'm Melissa Durkin, I'm principal of Ranger High Tech Academy. I'm here with two of our second grade learners today. And this month we were focusing on the Ranger Strong characteristic of teamwork. So both of these learners were nominated by their coaches for being fabulous team workers. First I'm going to introduce Gavin Lett. Gavin, you want to kind of wave, show them who they are? There's Gavin. Gavin was nominated by Coach Powell, and this is what Coach Powell had to say about Gavin. Gavin is who you would want as a teammate. Gavin actively listens to his teammates and is willing to use their ideas. He works hard and stays on task. He will even take on a task that no one else in his team wants to do. He does this for the common good of the team. Also, he encourages his teammates and supports them when they are struggling. He is able to do this without taking over or completing the tasks for them. That's pretty impressive. Keep up the excellent teamwork, Gavin. Great job. And we also have with us Dougie Cormack. Dougie was nominated by his coach, Coach Mossberger. And this is what Coach Mossberger has to say about you. Dougie demonstrates the Ranger Strong attribute of teamwork throughout the day. Dougie is always showing great teamwork in his PBL group and at his table. He is always willing to help out his team members if they don't understand and make sure that everyone gets to be part of the learning. He is always one that gets things started, and he is the leader of the group, making sure that no one is left behind and all the work gets completed. He also always has a positive attitude when working with a team. Great job, Dougie. Keep up the excellent work. As I was speaking to both of these learners before, I told them the hard work they already did. So this was the easy work that's coming today. You guys both did a great job. Thank you. I would like to now introduce Mrs. Bianca from the high school.
Before I talk about the amazing hunter, I'd also like to thank Big Frog for their t-shirts that their kids get to get. Thank you for supporting our students. Kathy has kids that goes to North Ridgeville City Schools. Our student of the month is our sophomore, Hunter Rosetto. She was nominated by Mrs. Guadino, who's the teacher of our students with intensive needs. Ms. Guadino wrote, Hunter's been in my classroom for the last 2 years, and she's taken on a leadership role as captain of the Sparkle Cheerleading Squad. She exudes happiness and is kind to all students. Her friendly and calm demeanor transfers well to my students as she exhibits the potential to become an exemplary leader or teacher. If creating certificates or homemade cheer bows for Sparkle cheerleaders or helping my students pack up at the end of the day, Hunter is always there with warm and opening arms. We are so lucky to have her. Upon graduation, she wants to become an elementary teacher, a special ed teacher, and her favorite classes are Spectrum and Choir. Congratulations.
Congratulations to all of our students of the month, and thank you to the staff that took the time to nominate them. Parents, as a reminder, after our presentations this evening, we will take group photos of all of the students of the month and our staff members of the month. And at this time, I would like to introduce Assistant Superintendent Keith Ahern, who will introduce our staff members of the month.
Thank you very much. So on behalf of the Board of Education, it's my privilege to recognize 2 staff members, one certified and one support staff, for the November staff recognition. Staff recognition candidates are nominated by their peers for their contributions to the North Ridgeville City School community and the significant impact that they have on the students and the families they serve and the colleagues they support every day. The first person I would like to introduce is Ms. Callie Gillis, if she would join me up here. She's a math teacher at North Ridgeville High School. Ms. Gillis, come on. If you awkwardly stand here next to me. So one of her nominators wrote, Callie is a wonderful teacher. Callie is very accommodating to students who need a little extra help. Callie is always one of the first people to school and one of the last teachers to leave. Callie has really tackled the idea of making math engaging for students. She's created projects and centers and is truly embracing different ways to teach students. Callie goes above and beyond to learn about students and form relationships, to help kids feel like part of the classroom community. Although Callie is a second-year teacher, she carries herself with such professionalism and goes above and beyond as a teacher each and every day. Another one of the many nominators wrote, Callie does a great job of building rapport with kids in her classes and getting them engaged in the material. She plans activities and lessons to help build their confidence and practice the skills being taught. Callie is always willing to work with kids before or after school to give them extra help and support. She allows the kids the opportunity to grow, improve, and succeed. Callie is very dedicated to her job and her students. She was always looking ways to make math fun and relevant for students. Ladies and gentlemen, congratulations to Ms. Callie. The next person I would like to introduce is Ms. Laura Matta, who is the Guidance Secretary at North Ridgeville High School. She would join me up here at the podium. So it's my pleasure to introduce Ms. Laura Matta. One of her many nominators wrote the following. Laura has been such an incredible person for me while integrating into the school district. When I hear staff talk about Ranger Strong, I think about Laura and what she does all day long in the office. Even though she may not be seen in the halls or in the classrooms, Laura is multitasking, triaging cases, collaborating with colleagues, community agencies, printing schedules, sending transcripts, working with other school districts, changing schedules, keeping track of 3 counselors and a social worker, talking to parents, reassuring students, and a million other tasks, all the while upholding a positive attitude, a kind heart, and a commitment to the district. Laura is authentic and genuine. She has made the start of my career at NRCS amazing. She deserves to be recognized for all her hard work behind the door at the Lakewood High School Guidance Office. Often her work, positive demeanor, and long hours go unnoticed. Thank you, Laura, for all you've done for me and the school. Another nominator wrote, Ms. Matta recently created our first college night at the high school. She invited colleges and planned every detail. Over 25 colleges have attended, as well as JVS and the military. We received a number of compliments about how well organized the event was from college representatives. Congratulations to Mrs. Matta on being recognized as the November Support Staff Member of the Month. We also have these engraved water bottles, courtesy of Ranger High Tech, or excuse me, the high school industrial tech, with your names and the date. So I'll show you right now. Here we go.
Congratulations again to all of our staff and students of the month. Well-deserved recognition. I now would like to turn it over to Mrs. Fitz and Mrs. Regals, who would like to present on behalf of the Leo Club at NRAC a talk to community care.
Good evening. I'm Ms. Regal, and this is Lion Dawn, and we represent the Leo Club and the Lions Club of North Ridgeville, Ohio. We would like to first and foremost thank all of the parents and the community members that contributed to the donations through our Spirit Week to raise this money that we can now present to community care. They raised $3,943.50 for our Spirit Week, which is now going to community care. So on behalf of the Leo and Lion Clubs, we'd like to present this check to you.
Thank you very much.
In community care, you may want to remain. Mrs. Armbruster from NRAC 58 would like to also present to community care a donation on behalf of her students.
So we also did, we have done it for the last few years, costumes for the cure, or costumes for community care. And so this year, the students raised on one day $1,252.64. So you will be receiving another check from the district. So thank you.
And I do thank all all of our families and community members for their generous donations. And I know our schools do ask a lot of our parents and of our community, and we do appreciate your help so that we too can give back to our community. So we appreciate your support. And now I would like to turn it over to Mr. Greg Plantner, who's going to give us an update about NRAC grades 3-4.
Thank you. Board members, it'll be behind you there, so. Good evening, everybody. I have the privilege tonight to talk a little bit about our school, how we've really progressed through the first trimester, and more than anything, what Ranger Strong means at 3rd and 4th grade here at the Academic Center. I know all of us have heard Ranger Strong, you've seen the banners, and you've seen the branding that we have around the district, but I wanted to spend some time about what it really means and how it really works for us at the Academic Center. And I'm going to focus primarily today on the last 3 letters of that acronym. We all know about service, teamwork, respect. I'm going to spend most of my time tonight talking about ownership, necessity, and goals. So our focus at the Academic Center is Ranger Strong through our academic excellence. So to begin, I wanted to talk a little bit about our Daily 5 reading. This is a reading program that we began last year that our teachers continue this year. It is a program that allows our students to take ownership of their reading. They are reading to themselves daily, they're reading to others daily, they are writing daily, and through the reading program, they take ownership, they understand the necessity of why they are doing this daily reading and how important it is for their future, and they set goals for their daily reading as well. It lends itself through academic excellence into our math program. We have a new math program this year called Into Math. And again, this is a math program that our teachers really have taken ownership of because they've had to spend a lot of time getting to know the program, learning how to use the new resources, learning how to make the program work the best way possible for our students so that they can achieve academic excellence through their math program as well. Our focus on academic excellence is Ranger Strong through our science explorations. At 3rd and 4th grade here, there's certainly a place for science books and science activity sheets and even science videos, but we like to do a lot of things through hands-on learning. So some of the pictures here can show how the students are manipulating materials so that they can actually feel and touch and experience the science concepts that they're learning in the classroom. And our focus on academic excellence is Ranger Strong because of data-informed instruction. And I know these are a little bit hard to see, but I put up here a variety of examples of the data that we use in our classrooms to really pinpoint what our students know, what they need to know, and what they're ready to move on to next. So a report like this one here, I don't know if you can see the laser pointer, can show us exactly how many students are at or above benchmark in an area and which students we need to get caught up. A report like this one over here can show us how our students are growing and how they're making progress through reading and in math. We have a couple of new programs this year. This one is a report from a program called Edmentum that helps us develop individualized learning paths for students. So it gives specific skills that they can work on and they can close those gaps that they might have through independent learning. This is a report from a program we use called AimsWeb that focuses on our reading program and helping our students meet their reading goals. And then this one I put at the top is actually a growth report from our Renaissance Learning Program. So parents probably know STAR Reading and they know STAR Math, and you see some of the student reports, but this report here is really focused on student growth. So we have students who are achieving at an average level and they're making progress the way we would expect them to. We have students who are a little bit farther behind their peers, and then we have students above and beyond where their peers are. And our focus is to make sure that all of our students grow. No matter where they start, our focus is making sure that all of our students show growth. And this report helps us determine exactly how much their growth is showing compared to national peers. So the STAR program is used nationwide, and we're talking tens of thousands of students who take these tests. So our students get compared to students just like them. We know exactly what is expected for their growth, and then we can determine, are they keeping pace with that? Are they achieving above and beyond that? Or do they need a little bit extra support? So these numbers here, which I know you can't see, but a 50th percentile will tell us that they're doing exactly what they're expected to be doing. If they're a little bit behind that 50th percentile, we need to offer additional assistance. And if they're above that 50th percentile, that's what we want. Because we want our students to not only get 1 year worth of growth, but we really want them to go above and beyond that. And all of this data-informed instruction is what our teachers use to really make sure that we are doing what we need to do for each individual student. So above it, and then the final thing that particularly affects our students in third grade here at the Academic Center is, of course, third grade reading guarantee. So any parents who have children through third grade, or you have children coming to third grade reading guarantee is a significant piece of legislation that ensures that our students are reading at a third grade level before they go to fourth grade. So through the Ohio State testing preparation that we do, through some of the alternate assessment options that we give students, through targeted supplemental intervention that we provide for students, last year the board dedicated resources to after-school tutoring for every student who needed it. So 4 days a week for an hour a day for several months. We had students who came to after-school tutoring. The district dedicated resources to hiring teachers, to paying teachers, to put in extra time to help those students get caught up. And it's a program that's been incredibly successful. In the years that third grade guarantee has existed, we've gone through more than 2,000 students in third grade, and 99.9% of those students have been promoted to fourth grade. So it's an incredibly successful program that we're very proud of. Above and beyond academic excellence, our social supports for students are Ranger Strong. We have a positive behavior intervention support program, which involves Ranger Strong matrices, which again, it's a little bit hard to see, but these you can see around the district that help students understand where they are, whether it's in the gym, whether it's in the classroom, whether it's in the cafeteria, what's really expected and what Ranger Strong looks like. Our Ranger Strong bucks, we've got a couple students here holding them, are incentives that we use for our students so they can earn Ranger bucks for making good choices, and then they can use those Ranger bucks to exchange for incentives and opportunities. And then of course Students of the Month, which you saw here tonight. At third and fourth grade, we actually recognize 6 students from every studio every month. 1 for service, teamwork, respect, ownership, necessity, and goals. So 6 studios by 6 students. We actually have 36 Students of the Month, and then we're lucky to bring 2 of them here to represent our school. But the Student of the Month program is important for us to help recognize students as well. And then I know our board, and many of you have heard about the new emotional support room that we have in the district in a number of our schools. We have a new NRCS social worker that has had a tremendous impact for a number of our families already. And then we also have social skills groups that we work with our students as well. And then finally, the opportunities above and beyond the classroom that we provide for our students are Ranger Strong through our art club, our creator club, our student council, field trips that we take outside of the district for our students. For our students here. And then also, this is a field trip that our student council took just recently to Northridge Health Campus, and they worked with some of the senior citizens over there, which provides opportunities for our students. Our peer mentoring program, this is a picture of some of our high school Spanish students rather, who came out and taught introductory Spanish lessons to our third graders. Our third and fourth graders developed pen pals this year with 7th and 8th graders, so we have good peer mentoring programs as well. And then we have a recess lapse club program that we've coordinated through our PTO. So even through that PTO and even at recess, we focus on Ranger Strong. So finally, it is our culture that is Ranger Strong throughout the building. And this is just a tiny little video to wrap it up to help you see our students and how they exhibit Ranger Strong each day.
Good morning, Rangers. Good morning, Rangers. Good morning, Rangers. My name is Layla Kermont from the Green Studio. We hope you are having a great Rachel reading. Good morning, Rangers. Good morning, Rangers. Good morning, Rangers. Let's remember our Ranger Strong focus. Service, teamwork, respect, ownership, necessity, and goals. Have a great day, Rangers! Our Ranger Strong focus. Service, teamwork, respect, ownership, necessity, and goals. Have a great day, Rangers, and have a wonderful weekend. Have a great day, Rangers. Have a great day, Rangers, and have a wonderful weekend. Have a great day, Rangers. Service, teamwork, respect, ownership, necessity, and goals. Have a great day, Rangers, and have a wonderful 4-day weekend. Have a great day, Rangers. Have a great day, Rangers. Have a great day, Rangers. Our Ranger strong focus. Service, teamwork, respect, ownership, necessity, and goals. Have a great day, Rangers, and have a wonderful weekend. Superman!
Thank you.
Does the board have any questions for Mr. Fletcher?
Awesome job. And common theme, correct me if I'm wrong, we're meeting students where they're at and meeting their needs, whether it's socially, emotionally, relationally. And
Absolutely.
treating them all as individuals, and the data makes it that much easier to see on a daily basis where each individual student is, correct?
Absolutely, and I think that's really the key behind the entire Ranger Strong program, is that it's not only about academics, it's not only about social support, it's really about taking care of all the needs of the students and making sure that we're doing that on an individualized basis.
Tell us a little bit about those videos. Is that how do the students see those?
We do video announcements every morning.
Okay.
So several times a week I have students who come down and help with video announcements, so those are part of the clips from that. But it's a good opportunity for our students to not only get their announcements when it works for the teacher, when it works for the classroom, but I've been surprised to find that even though I did it out of necessity when we moved into the building, because we were still learning how to use the PA system, but even though it's difficult for me to know every single one of my 650 students, it allows them all to know me. And I think it makes me much more approachable, which I found has had a significant impact, which is good.
What was that number for 2 grade levels?
About 650 in 2 grades. And that's 2 grade levels in this building, because we know that we've got more over at High Tech Academy in 3rd and 4th grade as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done.
We will now turn it over to Mr. Berlingo, our treasurer, to talk about our 5-year forecast.
Okay, good evening. For those of you who may know, or those who may not be aware, every 6 months we need to submit a 5-year forecast to the state of Ohio, required by law. And it basically shows 3 years' worth of history in terms of our revenues and our spending, and then it projects out the next 5 years. The primary purpose is to show that we are remaining solvent, because the forecast relates to the general fund, which is the general operations of the district. It does not include things like construction. It does not include capital assets like buses. It does not include debt service. Those are all separate funds, or food service, which is a separate type of fund that's accounted for and not paid for with tax dollars per se, or other revenues that we receive from the state. So if we look at the benefits as to why we do forecasts, one, we can identify our revenue trends. What receipts we have coming in on an annual basis, primarily in the form of property taxes and revenues from the state for funding of our schools. Impact of legislation, any changes that occur either at the federal or state level. Spending patterns, areas where changes may be needed depending upon how spending is occurring in certain areas. For example, special education takes a certain amount of spending that's required by law to provide. So to the extent that that may be increasing, it may potentially cause issues with spending overall. our ability to implement new programs or initiatives. If we have excess funds, or if our funding is increasing from the state, that may provide us the opportunity to add programs. Helps maintain our fiscal responsibility, and it keeps the citizens informed. Every school district in Ohio publishes the 5-year forecast. It's out on the Ohio Department of Education website. You can go to it and look up the information from the school district in Ohio. We also publish it on our website under the Treasurer's Office, and you'll see the last 4 forecasts and how those changes have occurred over the last couple of years. Items that we consider, the educational programs that we have or are proposing, what's needed for the students to compete and succeed. Property valuations is a large part, and I'm going to show you a history of what's been happening in North Ridgeville. Economic trends. When fuel prices increase, it obviously costs us more to run buses and transportation. Same thing with other commodity rates. State mandates, to the extent they say you must implement certain services. Testing requirements, the state required that that be done online. We needed to provide the equipment in order to make that happen. The state does not fund that in addition to what they normally provide. Technology, we have a one-to-one initiative. We provide Chromebooks to all of our students. Well, there's certainly a cost to doing that. But in the long run, should be very beneficial. Transportation and certainly building costs. If your buildings are relatively new, maintenance should be less expensive, and the cost to operate the building should also be lower. For buildings that are aging, the opposite is true, and we spend more money on maintenance than upkeep. For fiscal year 19, which ended in June of 2019, just a brief breakdown and high-level view of what our revenues and expenses were. About 60% of our revenues come from local sources, which includes local property tax, fees, interest, and other types of local receipts. The state provides approximately 38% between the state foundation funding and rollback and homestead that they provide, which is an offset to the local property tax that the state reimburses us. And then some other expenditures. Salaries and benefits are certainly the largest part of our forecast. Personnel, in terms of teaching staff, administration, maintenance, bus drivers, all of the people it takes to run the school system, account for 75% or so of our operating budget. Purchase services are usually contractual in nature, contracted services and other utilities and that type of thing. Materials and supplies are a smaller percent, but you kind of see the breakdown. Again, the largest part is salaries and benefits. We look at our levy structure. Currently, we have a total millage of 55.04 mills that are assessed to taxpayers in North Ridgeville, but we are only collecting 36.9. That's because of House Bill 920 passed back in the 1970s, so that as inflationary adjustments are made to home values, the millage rates are reduced, so you don't pay any more in taxes. The exception to that, if we look at the emergency levies here in the center, those bring in a fixed dollar amount. These 4 levies that are highlighted bring in $10.6 million of revenue to the district. Regardless of home value, it'll always bring in $10.6 million. Those will not change. So again, as it'll bring in a fixed dollar amount, but as home prices escalate, the millage will also decrease. If you look at the column in the center that says millage reduction, the 55.404 has been reduced by 18.1 mils, which is about a 33% reduction from what was voted to what's being collected. And the difference in revenue to the district is 47 versus the 33.3 million, and that's in total as opposed to operating. I'm sorry, 40 million operating down to 28.8, an 11.5 million, 3.5 million reduction in revenue to the district due to inflation. property values in North Ridgeville have been escalating in the last several years. In calendar year 17, we have $790 million in total valuation. That includes homes, businesses, commercial, industrial, agricultural, residential properties. In 19, we had $908 million. And the estimate for 2020 is $940 million. So about a 3% increase year to year. Those numbers are not yet certified by the county auditor, but it's a very good number that I've used in the forecast. The property values, as they increase, we do see some additional revenue, but we also get reduced because of the house bill reduction factor. Going forward, I've projected out the 939 or 40 million going to 965 to $1 billion in 2022, up to about $1,065,000,000 in year 25-4. That's assuming a certain amount of growth in new construction. We've been averaging about 15 million a year. Taxable value. The taxable value is 35% of the residential value. So the actual increase in market value of homes is significantly more than what is ended on tax relief. The high-level summary of revenues and expenses for the last 3 fiscal years, we have been bringing in more revenue than we have been expending. And for the few years prior to that was also true. This fiscal year 2020, we were projected to go into deficit spending. Our revenues do not increase as quickly as our expenses, just because of inflation, and we don't see the increases to keep up with that. Eventually, school districts will always need to come back to taxpayers at some point in the future, and this board had made a commitment back in 2013, the last time a levy was passed, that they would not come back until 2022. The current forecast allows us to still meet that commitment. What you will notice here is that revenues are starting to decline in the next several fiscal years. The reason for that is by law, I cannot include in a forecast levies that have not been renewed. Those 4 emergency levies that I talked about, bringing in the $10.6 million, start to drop off the tax duplicate next year. 2 of them expire this year. They will be collected next year. The year after, they go away. We lose the revenue. So, and the other 2 levies expire in 22 and 23. So that's why you see the revenues actually declining. And the orange line shows our cash balance. So that by fiscal year 2022, we have $4.6 million left in the general fund. In 2023, we would be negative $9.6 million. If those levies are replaced, it's a substantially different story. The cash balance remains positive through fiscal 2023, not going negative to 2024. We have a 90-day cash reserve policy that we passed a couple of years ago. In order to maintain fiscal stability, we would prefer to have a certain amount of cash on hand and not go below that. That 90-day policy would force us to go back on the ballot in fiscal year 2022 for additional funds. But again, passage of those levies is critical, otherwise these revenues start dropping off rather quickly. If the levies are renewed as a potential substitute levy, substitute levies do bring in some additional revenue. They will take the current $10.6 million, that's a fixed amount. Any new construction would also pay tax on that amount, so we would see some additional revenue come in. Homeowners would still see a reduction in the millage based on inflation increase. So you know when the home value goes up, you'll still see a reduction in the millage, whatever's passed for that substitute. If we look at potential risks to forecast, there are many. Legislative changes to state funding formula. This year, we benefited by getting an additional $188,000. They froze funding year over year for all school districts in Ohio. But because our growth in student population has been so large, we did qualify for a special 2-year increase in state funding, $188,000 this year, potentially about $290,000 next year, but then it goes away unless the legislature votes a change into permanent, which would be hopeful. But they are also looking at different ways to fund schools. It seems like every new administration tries to come up with a new funding formula. We are many times unsure what the impact is going to be to the school district. The hope is that we will at least be kept whole, which in most cases they do keep the districts whole. But there's no guarantee. And because of that, there are risks. The legislative mandates, state and federal, again, changes in law that may apply to students in special education, economic impacts like interest rates, property values, inflation, commodity prices. All of those things have an impact on our budget. Inflation, although it may not, it'll increase home values and not necessarily bring us many additional funds, it does cause our costs. We can't get away from paying more for services year after year. It's just the nature of the beast. And certainly commodity prices like fuel, electric, gas, etc. So the forecast is our best estimate at this time based upon the trends, what we see in terms of additional head count as we add more students, and we've been adding 150 plus students per year. That obviously requires more teachers, more staff, more bus drivers, more buses, etc. So the cost of the district continues to escalate as more and more students are growing. So building is a good thing, but it also does bring additional costs to the school system. The hope is that we will see some additional commercial development because office buildings don't necessarily bring in kids with them. So we would like to see as much of the commercial industrial development as possible also. To the extent the city offers tax abatements for that to happen, they historically have tried to keep us whole. So when a firm is given an abatement in order to locate its facilities here in North Ridgeville, we do have a tax revenue sharing agreement with the city where we do split income tax revenue, the incremental revenue from the employees who work here. And they also try to have the companies give us cash donations to make up for the loss in property values. And that's something we meet with them regularly to make sure that we are kept whole. So when you do see abatements being given, it typically doesn't impact the schools the way you make that. Any questions?
Mr. Berlingo, correct me if I'm wrong, just so you all have a clear understanding, when he's talking about the property value passing the 1 billion mark, currently with the emergency levies, that doesn't generate additional revenue with the growth in North Ridgeville. Instead, the opposite is true. State funding, as valuations go up, it impacts the state share of our funding. And it impacts it in a way that we end up losing money from the state because of property valuations going up. So that's how it impacts us. So with all the growth, without the substitute levies, besides the immediate need and the funds we're losing, we don't obtain any current growth with the emergency levies that we would with the substitute levy, which would help offset the fact that the state reduces their share based on property valuations. So all that additional growth, once we pass the 1 billion mark, and those numbers continue to go up, it does absolutely impact the state share.
That is correct. I didn't go into sort of level of detail, but the state ranks all school districts from like 1 to 600 in terms of wealth. The wealth index is composed of income within the community, so the median incomes, average, and also property values. So they look at averages over a, say, 3-year period. Those are then compared with other districts, and we're ranked. We currently fall at about 34% or so on that index scale. So we are only receiving, when the state tells you they're paying $6,020 per student to educate children, we're getting about 30% of that because of considered being a wealthy school district. There are districts in Ohio that get no state funding, very few. And then there are districts in Ohio that get in excess of 100%. If you're looking at some of the inner cities, get much more than the 6,000%. So it's a wealth factor that tends to balance out funding based on economic conditions across the state.
Thank you, Mr. Riley. Any other questions from the board? Thank you.
Okay. So I have the pleasure of talking about our next steps based on what Mr. Berlingo just presented, and obviously having the impact of November 5th and how that will impact us as we move forward. I'd also like to introduce with me Vanessa Teiosu with Burgess & Burgess, who really helped us gather the data and the information in order for us to proceed the way that we did on November 5th. So despite the outcome of November 5th and the fact that it didn't go our way for both the substitute levy as well as our bond issue, we do think it's important to recognize and thank our community and all of those volunteers who tried to help spread the message about North Ridgeville City Schools and our needs. Those who walked door to door, those who made phone calls, those who, again, were out and about talking to community members was so critical to our need. And at the end of the day, we made an impact. We truly are closer to our needs being met than where we were a year ago. While our issues still exist, we still have operating issues that need to be renewed. Mr. Berlingo just shared some of that. We still have overcrowding issues at both Liberty and our high school and buildings that are failing our children. We are committed to our students, our staff, and our community. And I do think it's important to remind ourselves of why we're here and keep us focused, and that is our mission and vision. And we do need to put our students' futures in our perspective as we make decisions as we move forward. But as we consider those next steps, I do think it's important to think about the future of North Ridgeville and really creating our preferred future. So I do apologize, this is also hard to read. But we do have 4 expiring emergency levies. Again, Mr. Berlingo detailed those pretty well for you. Those 4 levies total $344,301. That is roughly 40% of our local operating dollars. Our total local operating budget is $27 million. There are a couple implications as we move forward that we need to think through. We do have 2 emergency levies that expire in 2020 and therefore need to be renewed before the end of that calendar year. If those 2 levies are not renewed, they will become new money. In other words, they will no longer qualify for the 12.5% homestead enrollback, and the district will miss a full year of collection. Those 2 levies that expire in 2020, and the numbers in red to the side, should total about $576,000. That is the money that would be shifted from the state portion that Mr. Berlingo talked about back to the local taxpayer. Again, any levies that are new and new money that are passed after September 30th of 2013 no longer qualify for the homestead and rollback exemptions. For North Ridgeville as a community, those 2, again, total $576,000 that would be shifted back to the community as opposed to the state keeping that burden. In total, all 4 of our emergency levies, if we were not to renew prior to their expiration dates, would total $1,330,537.63. Again, that money going back to the taxpayer as opposed to the state picking up that burden. That's pretty significant in terms of our future. We do think in order to maintain stability in our district, that keeping these 4 levies as emergency levies doesn't really impact North Ridgeville as a growing community. We are the fastest growing community in Northeast Ohio and potentially the second fastest growing district and city in the state. And I've got to double check that. But I do think we've gone from third to second. In also combining these, again, we talked about capturing the growth of new construction, and as those homes come online, they are paying the full millage amount versus that continuing to be reduced as they are now. Current taxpayers would not pay new tax. We also alleviated voter fatigue and having to return to the voters every 4 years, or 3 times within 4 years to renew these levies that currently exist, and again, we capture that growth. As an aside, issue 16, if you remember, was our bond issue to rebuild North Ridgeville High School as well as an elementary campus. And we stand to lose $23 million from the state of Ohio if we do not pass that bond issue prior to the end of 2020. Again, we are still working with an enrollment boom and overcrowding at 2 of our buildings, actually 3 of our buildings, as Ranger High Tech Academy is also feeling the growth pains throughout the city. But enrollment has increased over 700 students in the last decade, and more than half of those have come within the last 2 years. This continued growth is projected for at least the next 3 years. Beyond that, due to our city still having 2,400 buildable lots out there, and that only puts our city at 55% built out, we're not quite sure what to expect. Again, Liberty and the high school are already over capacity, and just to put that in perspective, our high school was built for about 1,200 students. We're at about 1,450. In addition to that, by today's standards with the OFCC, which is the Ohio Facilities Construction Commission, and the square footage allowed for each student, it would be for about 900 students based on their calculation. We will need to have some serious discussions this summer, and probably more likely sooner, about bringing in mobile trailers for students to learn in at all 3 of those buildings that are currently overcrowded in order to facilitate classroom space. And again, our facilities continue to decline. We are throwing a lot of money at problems that will not be corrected under the current structure of our buildings. At the end of the day, we are obligated to provide our students with safe, accessible learning environments, as we call it, warm, dry, and what's the other word now?
Safe.
Warm, dry, and safe. So we do have the obligation to spend those dollars to be sure that our students are in environments that they are warm, dry, and safe. And that is where we are putting our money if necessary. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Tay Iosu, who is going to review with us the results of November 5th.
Hello, thanks for inviting me back to discuss the past election results. I'm going to start by talking about the data that led us to the decision making to be on the ballot with both of those issues together. This is just a reminder of a slide that we saw together earlier in the summer. This is the slide that showed the second vote for a bond issue, assuming an informed electorate. At that time, 31% of your electorate said that they would definitely vote for the issue, with 19% saying probably for, taking us right to 50%. It sounds pretty familiar, doesn't it? So we knew it was a 50-50 split. We also knew that there were pockets of the community that were likely to be a little bit more supportive. And if you just look down to that second shaded box where it says NRCS parent, we saw that parents were the only subgroup to get us over 50%, at 55% definitely for the issue. So knowing that with a really strong campaign with your political action committee, we really had to convert all of our probably for voters and then some to get us over the hump, which became a little bit difficult towards the end, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So that's for the bond issue. And then when we looked at the substitute issue on its own, 41% of the electorate said that they would be definitely for the issue, with 21% being probably for. And here we saw more subgroups kind of peak over 51% or 50% in the definite category. Those were wards 1 and 2, and then again our parents, and then residents of the community that were between 11 and 20 years of duration. You also saw that there was 72% of support among those who said they were already for the bond issue. So supporters were supporters, regardless of what was in front of them. And what was curious is, as we look back through the survey results, the arguments that were most compelling were about the bond issue, because that was what was tangible to people, the overcrowding. What we saw when it came to the election results, this is a little hard to read, I apologize, but I also have a printed version if anyone wants to see it, is that our wards kind of shifted. Ward 3 overperformed from historical election results, but also overperformed from what the survey said. And we did spend, especially the Political Action Committee, the citizens group, spend a lot of time on the ground in Ward 3, and we saw that result kind of bear out, especially when it came to issue 17 on the substitute. But we saw that we also underperformed in places that showed initial support, which was wards 1 and 2. What was extraordinarily curious to me is that when we targeted the voters based on who was likely to turn out based on their habitual patterns, so people who are likely to vote are people who continue to vote as part of their habit. So when we looked at the voting behavior, we targeted 9,349 people. We thought that's who would likely vote. But what we wanted was an oversampling of parents who might not be super frequent voters, so they might not cast ballots in 3 of the last 4 general elections, but because they're connected to the schools, we wanted to be able to turn them out to vote. But if we're just looking at the numbers, the total ballots cast in the higher turnout election, or the higher turnout vote, which was issue 16, was 9,574, which means we only had a marginal bump up from what we considered to be people who vote out of habit. That will be more interesting to dive into once the state certifies their election results and releases who actually cast the ballot. Then we'll be able to compare those names to the people who we targeted, and we can see, were we able to influence some of those parent groups to actually turn out to vote. That will be interesting to see. So what we can, I just said, what we can assume, and some of the analysis shows us, that our turnout was close to projections, but we didn't convert some of those voters that we needed to actually turn from probably to definitely for. We saw gains in Ward 3, especially when you look at past performance of election results, but Wards 1 and 2 really did not perform for us. Ward 4 came out about where it said it was supposed to come out when we looked again at the survey results and some past history. We were able to convert some votes, especially when it came to issue 17, not as much as issue 16. But what happened towards the end of the campaign, which often happens, as we gained momentum from one side and as we were really highly visible, we started to see some cracks. We saw rumors swirling. Duration became one of the issues that, especially on message boards and even among some of our supporters, when the substitute levy was referred to as a continuing period of time, we started seeing people a little bit peel off support. We also, like I said, didn't see a turnout surge, which tends to happen when people are confused. Confused voters don't vote. And that potentially is what happened. So, as I said, I suspect that a lot of that might be our marginal voters who would have been supported if they would have shown up. They just weren't compelled to show up. As we're looking towards the future, because we have to look towards the future, as more students continue to enroll in our schools, as these levies, especially the 2 substitutes, get closer and closer to their expiration date, we really have to think about how do we set the stage for our community and for our schools so that we can stabilize funding and build for growth. So this is just a look at the March 2020 as our turnout models. So just the yellow highlights in that first row, where it says 1/4P. This represents people that cast ballots in one of the last 4 primary elections. These are people who are likely to turn out in a contested presidential primary. Where it says 2/4P, that's people who would cast ballots in 2 of the last 4 primary elections, so they're not necessarily as motivated. Knowing that there's a contested presidential primary on the Democratic side, you see close to 4,000 people that are likely to turn out that would be registered as Democrats. There's also a contested prosecutor's race, that's a local race, that will have a Democratic primary, so there's likely to be more enthusiasm on one side versus the other. Whereas a Republican turnout, if there's not a contested primary, is likely to look closer to that second row, so about 2,800. So if all things are equal, and there's not a lot of enthusiasm, we could probably consider some of those independents coming out to vote who wouldn't necessarily vote in a presidential race for a primary, you probably are looking around 7,500 ballots cast. Unless something changes in Iowa, which we won't know, how the field kind of narrows or expands by the time it gets to Ohio. We have a late primary this year, it's St. Patrick's Day, so March 17th makes it so that the race could potentially be less contested by the time it gets to Ohio. What's also interesting for me, probably not for anybody else, but is looking at the primary election voters by age. And you'll see that there's an infrequency of voters, so voters who cast ballots in 1 of 4 elections. You see a lot more 18 to 35-year-olds, who are also, when we recall looking at the support models before, a little bit more likely to support tax issues. So it is, a potentially favorable electorate looking at it that way. And then some of the things that I like to look at, but you also see that how the group of 18 to 35-year-olds or 30 to 44-year-olds who are likely to be parents are a bigger proportion in the infrequent voting category versus the frequent voting categories. I mean, when you look at those age breakdowns for people who voted before the last 4 primary elections, look how small those numbers get. So knowing this, it's a smaller electorate, sometimes more easy to communicate with them. They're slightly younger, and so some of those communication models are a little bit less expensive, but also primary voters tend to be more informed voters. So it does give us a little bit more opportunities to communicate and communicate a more simplified message. Any questions for me about modeling? I hope I didn't overwhelm with numbers, but I do have printouts if anybody would like to take a closer look, because I know it's a little blurry.
So as we consider next steps in moving forward, we know that there's an urgent need to stabilize our local funding by means of another shot at our substitute levy campaign. We do need to manage our overcrowding, we need to stabilize our funding, and right now our operating dollars is the most critical thing for our school district. We cannot build buildings, open them, operate them, staff them if our operating dollars are not stable. And that is, as we think about next steps, recommendation would be to retry the substitute levy in March and then talk about moving forward with the bond issue. Again, both needs persist, but without the operating dollars, it's very difficult to talk about building. One of the things, though, that I think Vanessa highlighted, it's important that we listen to the community. And one of the things that we heard loud and clear was that idea that a continuing levy was a little bit concerning for our community. So I would also recommend that we look at a 10-year as opposed to continuing and then readjust in the future. We need to, again, talk about when would be best to go back for the bond issue, but knowing that we stand to lose $23 million from the state of Ohio if we do not pass that bond issue by December of 2020. Again, keeping our residents and our community in the know as we go through this process, keeping everybody informed, answering questions, and really sticking to the facts and the message, not getting lost in confusion as perhaps we did this past time. So that's really our recommendation as we consider next steps. And at this time, I will take any questions you might have.
Laura, do you have any questions? I do. I want to know about a 10-year time limit on the substitute. Does that still allow us to capture growth of the community?
It absolutely does. So nothing changes in terms of the substitute levy. It's a substitute levy that would capture all of the new construction in the same way that a continuing would. It simply is the length of time. Again, the community was very vocal about that continuing piece and not having the option to come back and evaluate the school district. And we feel that it's important to recognize that the community did have an opinion and that we should consider that, and therefore a 10-year would address the same needs in terms of our growth and our dollars in our checkbooks, but it limits that term to 10 years.
My other question is in regards to the overcapacity of our buildings currently. Looking to put mobile spaces onto our buildings. Do we have an idea, and we might not know at this point, but do you have an idea of the costs that we will incur for that?
Matt, you might be able to speak more specifically, but we're talking millions. We're talking utilities, we're talking temporary pipes and lines and concrete and footers, et cetera, that would all need to go into that. Matt, I don't know if you want to add to it.
Yeah, for one classroom, $200,000.
For one classroom?
One classroom.
Is that an elementary classroom or is that a?
Elementary. That was based on Liberty, factoring for Liberty.
So definitely would be a significant cost.
You said 200,000?
Yeah.
And then one of the concerns that I've heard from residents is not knowing what buildings would look like. So can you explain a little bit about what the process is with the Ohio Facilities Construction? Yeah, those people, OFCC?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's something that, as the PAC went out and did that talk, having that conversation and explaining that process, I think was very helpful to people. A school district who is partnered with the state of Ohio cannot really hire an architect until that bond issue is passed. So bringing on an architect after the bond is passed to be able to do some renderings of a building would certainly be helpful. But before the bond is passed, we aren't able to do that. We simply don't have the funds in place. What we do know through our master planning or facilities planning committee is that we know we have the space to build. So just in doing a brief overlay of where buildings might go, we know that we have the land to build an elementary on the property north of Liberty, and we have land here on this campus to build a new high school. That would be plenty of space to not only project our current enrollment, but if we do boom in the future, plans for future growth. So we would be able to map out exactly or potentially where those buildings might go. But in terms of what they look like, you really need an architect in hand. When you are working independently and not coupled with the state of Ohio, you can bring an architect on board ahead of passing a bond issue, and you can do some of those renderings and share those with the community. I think the important thing to know, though, is that once we are in that position, it would be my desire to bring in the community, bring in our staff, and talk about what the needs are. What do we want to see? And have those ongoing back and forth conversations, and to be able to build buildings that the entire community is proud of and have the input in order to get us to that point.
And I know our focus right now is, as your recommendation is to go back on the ballot in March for a substitute levy that combines these four, but I just have two more questions in regards to a bond issue. And I completely forgot exactly what they were when I was saying that sentence.
It'll come back to you.
Yeah, it totally will.
Again, that need is still there. We're going to continue to grow, and we're growing faster than we can keep up. So we will have to have some serious conversations about temporary classroom space, and again, expending more funds for temporary classroom space and really putting it into a potential construction project moving forward.
One of them did come back to me. I wanted to thank you for that pause. The $23 million that we get back from the state of Ohio, that we are subject to lose if we don't pass this by the end of 2020. I know we have explained this in the past, but I just want to be very clear that there are three things that money can be used for, and they're all related to a bond issue project.
A capital project, correct. So one of the things that I'm not sure we have explained very well is that because of our urgent situation with our growth, the state allowed us to enter the ELP program, which is the Expedited Local Partnership Program. Essentially, it's an emergency program for schools that are in a situation like us with growth. Whereas in a traditional classroom facilities assistance program that this building was built under, you have to wait, and at this time, we were told 5 to 6 years before we would be accepted into that traditional program. So what is the difference? The traditional program fronts the school district the money. So if the equity rank, again, the $23 million, would be deposited into the school district account, and then we would go forth and build. Under ELP, we are required to fund the entire project up front, and then the state reimburses us once the project is complete. So there's two different programs, and there was some confusion about that money that would come back. But you're right, President McCarthy, that money could only be used for the project itself, to complete the project, and or to put back in terms of paying off the bonds in order for the taxpayers to see a reduction in those costs.
Thank you. And then finally, my last question in regards to that is the timeframe that it takes between passing a bond, a capital improvement project to completion of a building.
Also a great question. Generally, if you're playing it safe, about 5 years. Your first year, immediately we would get on board an architect and a construction manager who would help us start to put plans in place as quickly as possible. You've got about a year of design phase. Again, I talked about bringing in the community, bringing in the staff, getting a sense of what we want to see in this community and what we would be proud of. And then ultimately, going through design and construction documents takes some time, and then building itself takes at least 2 years. So again, that's a lot of construction happening at one time. Right now, we know construction in Northeast Ohio is booming, and we don't know what that looks like in the future, but we did figure those things as we went through our master planning in terms of cost and making sure that we weren't falling short. Thank you.
I'm sorry for that was all the questions. Does anyone else have any?
I just have one question. So clearly it's critical that the substitute levy passes in March if we go forward with this plan. If for some reason it does not, and we've heard the impact, which is devastating, do we have other opportunity before we lose collection on that? Obviously, it's very urgent that we pass this in March.
Yeah, so obviously March would be the best possible scenario in order for us to look at next steps in terms of a bond issue. We would have the option to put it back on in November. Again, combining the two issues we saw this past November was a little bit confusing, but we would have other options too in terms of not capturing that growth and perhaps just renewing. Again, not feasible for a school district that is growing at the rate that North Ridgeville is growing.
Thank you.
Any other questions? There's no other questions at this time.
Thank you.
Thank you all for sticking with us through all of that. That's a lot of information this evening. Now it brings us to the point on our agenda for announcements. Does any board member have announcements for this evening? I know one announcement. Yeah, we'll get there. I know one announcement we have is we have safety night, and Mr. Yucker, can you tell us?
Yeah, tomorrow, and this is in the Academic Center in the cafeteria at 6 p.m. We'll be hosting our annual safety night, and the focus is to go over the resources in place that we have, that we use with our students and our staff as it relates to keeping them safe through active intruder events, through fire drills, through the different various drills we do. We are inviting our not only our parents, but also our students to attend tomorrow night at 6 p.m. in the cafeteria here at the Academic Center, and that's for grades K for pre-K through 12.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, at this time we will take an intermission, and whoever is left can get their picture taken for Student of the Month and Staff of the Month, and whoever else wants their picture taken. At this time, it's hearing of public on agenda items. If anyone would like to speak about an item that's on tonight's agenda, you may do so by approaching the podium. You need your name and address, and there's a 3-minute time limit. Seeing none, move on to consent agenda. It is recommended the Board of Education approve the consent agenda resolution as presented. It's on page 9.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Yetsey, seconded by Mrs. Saxon. Is there any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Yetsey?
Yes.
Ms. Saxon?
Yes.
Ms. Demura?
Yes.
Mr. Vaca? Yes. Ms. McCarty?
Yes. All right, that takes us to Finance Audit Report. And in lieu of the presentation that we just heard this evening, the following is the first resolution required to submit to the electors of the school district at an election on March 17th, 2020, the question of a substitute tax levy to take the place of all 4 existing emergency tax levies. If approved, that tax would be first levied in tax year 2020 and first collected in calendar year 2021, and would run for a period of 10 years. I motion to approve the levy resolution under the finance audit report in one reading.
Second.
Sorry, I moved this back page. Moved by myself, seconded by Mr. Vaca. Is there any discussion? The board, I just wanted to talk about the 10-year timeframe. Everybody understands why we're shifting to a 10-year versus continuing based on the presentation this evening, and everyone's comfortable with that.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you. Roll call, please.
Ms. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Vaca?
Yes.
Ms. Jensen?
Yes.
Ms. Saxon?
Yes.
Mr. Mura?
Yes.
Thank you. To continue with the finance audit report, October year-to-date receipts continue to exceed prior year amounts by $597,000. Tax receipts will continue to be the primary driver of the increase. Foundation receipts were $42,000 lower than the prior year, but this funding is forecasted to exceed the prior year fiscal year amount by $100,000 by June of 2020. The previous year included the one-time sale of Field Suite. Interest earnings are $37,000 higher. Operating expenses were $1.3 million higher than prior year, driven by salaries, supplies, and operating fees, primarily due to timing and increased headcount. Supplies account for $406,000 of the increase due to the timing of a textbook purchase. The net increase in general fund headcount will increase estimated fiscal year 2020 costs by $800,000 to $900,000 over the May forecast. This increase has been incorporated, as we just learned this evening, into the November forecast to be approved at this meeting. The transfers below are required to cover the annual cost of required programs provided to special education students in the district. The 5-year forecast is required to be prepared and filed with the state of Ohio on a biannual basis. The forecast is developed based on projections relative to real estate values, state foundation funding, enrollment programs, and the necessary personnel and associated expenses to support the educational needs of students for the forecast period. I motion to approve the finance and audit report in one reading.
Second.
Moved by myself, seconded by Mrs. Tamura. Is there any discussion? I just want to thank Mr. Berlingo for your report this evening.
Welcome.
Roll call, please.
Ms. McCarthy?
Yes.
Ms. Tamura?
Yes.
Ms. Jensen?
Yes.
Ms. Saxon?
Yes.
Mr. Vaca?
Yes.
That takes us to other board business. We have education report from Mrs. Tamura.
To maintain the North Ridgeville City Schools records retention policy with communications for public records, the district needs to replace their current email archiving appliance to a larger server. The current server is unable to maintain record retention at an appropriate rate of archiving. The IT department has requested several vendors for quotes and would like to accept the bid from DataCore for a Barracuda Message Archiver 950 appliance at the cost of $53,981.09. This will include new hardware, installation, and the transfer of data from the current appliance to the new appliance. This is the first reading for the Barracuda Message Archiver 950 appliance. Second reading and approval will be on the December 3rd special meeting.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions about that? We had a presentation from Mr. Rouse and, we're good? All right. You can continue, Mrs. Tamura.
We have a few agreements for consideration under the education report. First, we have an agreement with Jerry Maduri, BCBA, for behavioral consulting services for the 2019-2020 school year. We also have 2 agreements with Ombudsman. First, an amendment to an existing contract for educational services for students with special needs, and a new agreement for educational services for students with special needs. Finally, we have an agreement with the Educational Service Center of Lorain County for literacy consulting with teachers. I motion to approve these agreements in one reading.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Tamura, second by Mrs. Saxon. Is there any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Tamira?
Yes.
Ms. Saxon?
Yes.
Ms. Yetsey?
Yes.
Mr. Baca?
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy?
Yes. That takes us to our human resources report. Mrs. Saxon?
Yes, we have a few items to consider under the Human Resources Report. 1 special project stipend, 3 supplemental appointments, 3 non-NREA supplemental resolution appointments, 1 support staff substitute, 5 certified staff leaves of absence, 1 support staff leave of absence, 2 support staff resignations. I motion to approve the human resources items in 1 reading.
Second?
Moved by Mrs. Saxon, seconded by Mrs. Tamira. Is that correct? Is there any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Saxon?
Yes.
Ms. Tamira?
Yes.
Ms. Yetsey?
Yes.
Mr. Baca?
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy?
Yes. It takes us to hearing of public on new items. Same procedure as before. Approach the podium, name and address. Yes?
I recommend a state of the end raffle.
State of the end raffle.
Can of Coke, something.
We give you a Snickers.
Thank you.
King size.
Okay, seeing that, it is recommended the Board of Education enter into executive session to discuss the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, compensation of public employees, and matters related to negotiations of public employees.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Tamira, seconded by Mrs. Yetsey. Is there any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Tamira?
Yes.
Ms. Yetsey?
Yes.
Ms. Saxon?
Yes.
Mr. Baca?
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy?
Yes. It takes us to 7:37 p.m.